Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. On our 30th wedding anniversary, I was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. My husband, a high-ranking officer, handed me divorce papers. "Let's get divorced," he said coldly. "I'll leave everything behind. All the money in the house will stay with you for your treatment." "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling. He replied calmly, "You can't die as my wife. If you do, Lily will only ever be seen as my mistress. She's proud. She wouldn't be able to live with that." A mouthful of black blood surged up my throat. I collapsed, full of sorrow and unwillingness, and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I had returned to our wedding night. 23-year-old Ryan looked at me and said, "Emily, I can marry you, but I won't touch you." I had promised Lily I would stay pure for him my entire life. I nodded. "Then let's get divorced." After the noisy wedding banquet ended, Ryan sat in a high-back chair, staring at me with a serious face. "Emily, let's talk. You know, Lily and I were forced apart by our families. I can't forget her. I can give you the status of a wife, and I'll give you all of my salary, but I can't give you myself. I promised Lily that until she comes back to me, I'll stay loyal to her." Hearing those familiar words left me dazed. I had been reborn. Back to our wedding night. Back to the night Ryan laid everything out in the open. In my past life, I was naive and inexperienced. I had been touched by the tragic love between Ryan and Lily and agreed without hesitation. Ryan told me that if he didn't find someone to marry, his family wouldn't let Lily off the hook. Back then, Lily was the daughter of a capitalist sent to the countryside for re-education labor. Ryan came from 3 generations of military men, the only son in a fisherman family that placed all their hopes on him. For the sake of his future, his family absolutely refused to let him marry a capitalist's daughter. To calm him, they agreed that as long as the girl had the right background, he could marry anyone except Lily. And so Ryan chose me. I came from 3 generations of poor farmers, a good background. I was a rural girl, naive, pure, easy to manipulate. But in this life, Ryan, I won't be a piece in your tragic love story. I lifted my head and looked at him with calm determination. "I understand. Then tomorrow, please come with me to the commune office to file for divorce." Ryan stared at me in shock. "Why?" I smiled slightly, my deep dimples showing. "Because I was also forced to marry you. There's someone else in my heart too. But just like your Lily, I can't marry him right now." For a moment, Ryan's expression twisted like he'd swallowed a live fly. I sneered inwardly. "So you can have your precious white moonlight, but I can't have my red mole." When I said there was someone in my heart, Ryan's lips pulled into an ugly smile. "Well, that's fine. That way, neither of us owes the other anything. But let's not rush the divorce. You can't marry him right now anyway." I shook my head firmly. "No, he has his pride. I won't let people say he was the one who came between our marriage." Ryan's expression turned even uglier. Just as he was about to speak, I picked up the thick floral quilt I'd brought as part of my dowry. "I'm afraid you'll get jealous later. Let's sleep in separate rooms tonight." Watching the shocked and humiliated look on Ryan's face, I felt incredibly satisfied inside. This time, you can experience what it's like to spend a long night alone, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I got up and found the house cold, the kitchen untouched. I didn't even make breakfast. Ryan froze for a moment, then gave a bitter smile. "Emily, even if we're pretending, shouldn't we at least act like a married couple? You still have to cook, right? What will people think if the house is cold and silent like this?" Yes. In my previous life, that foolish version of me really believed that to protect Ryan and Lily's secret, shameful love, I endured the heartache and acted like a beautiful little wife. Buying groceries, cooking meals, doing laundry, mopping floors, keeping our tiny household in perfect order. But the truth was, every day after work, Ryan and I were like 2 roommates in a business arrangement. We ate dinner in silence, and then retreated to our separate rooms. For 3 whole years, Ryan honored his promise to his white moonlight and never once laid a hand on me. 3 years later, my father-in-law was hospitalized with liver cancer, and my mother-in-law's health was failing, too, under the pressure of public opinion. As their daughter-in-law, I had no choice but to quit my job and come home to take care of them. I thought it would be temporary, but I ended up caring for them for 12 years. My father-in-law's liver cancer dragged on for 3 years before he passed away. Right after that, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with a tumor. During those years, I stayed by their side in the hospital, taking care of every need. I lost over 30 pounds from exhaustion. A strong gust of wind could have blown me away. But when I finally returned to the military housing complex after sending my in-laws off, I found that the home that once belonged to Ryan and me had already been taken over by his white moonlight Lily. That evening, I stood at the door and watched as Ryan, dressed in a sharp military uniform, opened the front passenger door of his Jeep with a soft, gentle expression. Lily, wearing a khaki trench coat and dressed stylishly, took his hand gracefully and stepped out of the car. When they saw me standing at the door, Ryan froze for a moment. "Emily, why are you back?" I forced a stiff smile. "This is my home. Why wouldn't I come back?" The neighbors in the compound had all turned to look. Lily's face flushed with shame and tears. She yanked her hand from Ryan's and ran off, covering her face and crying. Ryan glared at me, furious, and snapped, "Emily, don't think that just because you looked after my parents all these years, sent them off at the end, that I'll be grateful or fall in love with you. I told you on the day we got married. Lily is the one I love. You and I are just a fake couple with no real relationship." That night, neither Ryan nor Lily came back. But if he had waited just one more minute, he would have known I didn't return to be his wife. I only came back to collect my belongings and to tell him now that his parents were gone. There was no one left in this world to stand between him and Lily anymore. I wanted to part peacefully. I wanted to take this opportunity to get the divorce papers signed so that he and Lily, the ill-fated lovers, could finally be together openly and freely. I also wanted to tell him that while I held resentment over the years, I never hated him. Even though he made me live like a widow for 30 years, because of him, I also spent 30 years as an officer's wife, enjoying the benefits of a military family. Before my mother-in-law passed, she even held my hand and said that Ryan owed me. She told me that if I no longer wanted to stay with him, I should divorce him. She left me 5,000 yuan and a small apartment. Even if we divorced, I wouldn't be left homeless. I had already made up my mind to part ways peacefully. But Ryan, as if possessed, was convinced that my years of taking care of his parents were nothing more than emotional blackmail. That I was using morality to shackle him, to keep him from ever divorcing me. That's how we misunderstood each other in our past life. To save face for Lily, he requested a transfer and took his beloved white moonlight to a remote border region. I stayed behind, enduring endless gossip and eventually developed stomach cancer. Even as I lay dying, I was still forced to divorce. Snapping back to the present, I picked up our household registration booklet and the marriage certificate we had just received 2 days ago, and I once again urged Ryan to go with me to file for divorce. But to my surprise, the same man who had repeatedly told me to stop holding on to hopeless feelings was now dragging his feet. Unwilling to go, I forced myself to stay patient and explained, "Don't worry, we'll do it quietly. Even after the divorce, during holidays, or when your parents are mentioned, I'll still keep my promise and act the part of your wife." Ryan cut me off irritably. "No. Do you think you can just get a divorce from a military marriage that easily? We have to file a report with the unit. Once that's submitted, my parents will definitely find out." His eyes burned with suspicion. "Emily, are you trying to kill Lily on purpose?" I was stunned silent. I truly hadn't expected that even getting a divorce would require a report to the military unit. Seeing me rendered speechless, Ryan's stiff expression relaxed slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He tried to reassure me. "Don't worry about your reputation. I've already arranged for Lily to be transferred to the military hospital. From now on, both she and I will stay on base. You'll be the only one living at home." My eyes lit up. "Then can I bring someone to stay with me?" Ryan's smile immediately vanished. "You mean that man? You want to bring him into this house?" I nodded enthusiastically. "Don't worry, I won't embarrass you. I'll tell everyone he's my brother." Ryan opened his mouth as if to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. I knew exactly what he wanted to say. That men and women shouldn't live under the same roof if they aren't family. and that I shouldn't get too close to another man. But he was the one who just told me he'd be living with Lily on base, and now he wanted to stop me from doing the same. Wasn't that just slapping his own face? Watching him turn red with frustration like he was about to explode, I suppressed my laughter and deliberately added, "If you're worried that bringing someone into the military compound would spark gossip, then why don't you give me some money so I can rent a place for him outside?" Ryan froze for a second, then immediately exploded like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Emily, you actually want to use my money to support some guy you picked up off the street?" Watching Ryan completely lose it, I kept my voice calm and patient. "Chris isn't some random guy. He's the man I love. If it weren't for the fact that his background was considered bad, and my parents firmly opposed it, I never would have entered this fake marriage with you." If I had said something similar about Lily, Ryan would have praised me for being understanding and thoughtful. But because I was talking about Chris, his face twisted like he'd just bitten into a chunk of raw sewage. I couldn't help but scoff inside. In my previous life, I'd hinted to Ryan that he should keep a respectful distance from Lily. After all, he was still legally my husband. Clinging to a single woman while married would not only tarnish his parents' reputation, but also risk his career. And what did he say back then? "Emily, don't insult the love between Lily and me with your filthy peasant logic. We may love each other, but we've never crossed the line. What we share is a pure, revolutionary friendship." Now, I returned those exact words to him without changing a single syllable. "Ryan, I've already told you, Chris and I have nothing but a pure revolutionary friendship. We may admire each other, but we've never crossed the line. If you really don't believe me, then fine, let's get divorced." Back then, Ryan wasn't yet the powerful commanding general he would become 30 years later. Worried that his parents would come after Lily, he didn't dare truly go through with a divorce. Taking a deep breath, his face turning iron gray, Ryan pulled a handful of large denomination bills from his breast pocket and hurled them at me like he was venting his rage. "Fine, take it. Go support your wild man, but keep him far away from me. I don't want to see him." I picked up the money without a word and walked out of the military housing complex without looking back. Behind me, I heard the crash of a glass cup shattering on the ground. But really, what right did he have to be angry? Wasn't he the one who proposed this fake marriage to begin with? In this new life, I refused to waste another moment on the Ryan family. I was going to save the man who had given me the only warmth I had after death in my previous life. Back then, Ryan insisted on divorcing me before I died. I knew why. He didn't want me buried in the family tomb. Even in death, he wanted that space beside him to be reserved for the woman he truly loved. After I died, I wasn't welcome in his family's burial ground. I couldn't return to my own either. I nearly became a nameless corpse buried in some forgotten graveyard. It was Chris. Yes, the same man I had once given a few wild vegetable buns to, who used his own money to buy me a burial plot, claiming me as his wife. I remembered how in my past life that man had carved "Wife of Chris Walker" into my headstone with his own hands. The thought of it made my heart ache. Right now, Chris was still locked up in a cowshed for speculation and profiteering. I paid some money and simply mentioned the names of Ryan's parents. In just half a day, Chris was released. "Chris," I called out. My hoarse voice shocked him. Thankfully, he recognized me. Everyone around said he was lucky. If I hadn't come that day, Chris would have been sent to a labor farm the very next morning. On the way home, Chris looked at me playfully. Since when did I suddenly get a little sister I didn't know about? My face flushed with embarrassment. For a moment, I didn't know how to explain. After all, at this point in time, Chris and I weren't even acquaintances, let alone close enough for him to have buried me or bought me a grave plot. Seeing me blush and stay silent, Chris assumed he'd gone too far with the joke and quickly apologized. "Comrade Emily Shen," he said seriously. "Words can't express my gratitude. From now on, you're like a real sister to me. If anyone dares to bully you, just say the word. I'd go through fire and water for you." I lifted my head. "Really, Ben? Would you be willing to pretend to be my boyfriend?" I rented Chris a small courtyard house 3 streets away from the military housing compound. In my previous life, I had stupidly kept my promise, cooking and washing for Ryan every day, playing the part of the sweet, loving, newlywed wife for appearances in the compound. But in this life, I had no intention of covering up for Ryan and Lily anymore. When Ryan brought the military-issued meat, eggs, and milk to Lily to nourish her health, I used the rice, flour, and cooking oil from my unit to make Chris his favorite noodle dish with sauce and toppings. When Ryan used his salary and ration coupons to take Lily to the department store, the movies, and restaurants, I took my salary and coupons and brought Chris to the scrapyard. Chris's family used to run a pawn shop, so he had a sharp eye. He always managed to spot real treasures hidden among piles of discarded junk. At first, Ryan was thrilled. I never asked where he was going or who he was with. After marrying me, he thought he could continue spending time with his beloved white moonlight, just like before. But not long after, he came to me and said, "Emily, we can't go on like this. Don't you see how this house is becoming less and less like a real home?" I didn't say a word. Ryan would never understand. I had truly treated this place as my home in my past life. He talked big, claiming he'd give me his salary while giving his love to Lily. But in reality, he only gave me that first month's wages. After that, I never saw another cent. All of his salary and coupons went into movie tickets, snowflake cakes, dresses, and candies for Lily. I was the only fool who saved every penny, quietly buying furniture, bedding, curtains, and dishes, turning a cold dorm room into a warm little home. I also saved all the meat, sugar, and egg coupons from the unit, waiting for Ryan to come back on leave, so I could cook something delicious for him. He told me not to hold out hope, not to fall for him. Yet, he shamelessly enjoyed every bit of what I gave to that home. But the naive Emily Shun of the past was dead. In this life, I no longer cared whether the house felt like a home or whether Ryan came back cold and hungry from leave. I moved everything the unit gave me over to Chris's place. Every day, I cooked and ate with him before going back home. Ryan assumed I stayed at the compound, that at least when he came home there'd be a warm meal waiting. But instead he was greeted by a cold lock on the door. When he opened it, the house was silent and lifeless, as if no one had lived there for a long time. The hot water bottle was empty. The coal stove by the door hadn't been used in ages. Panicked, he ran to ask the neighbors. What he didn't expect was for them to say, "Oh, your wife. She's been staying at her brother's place. Says she's cooking over there now. Said there's no point making food just for herself. She goes there, cooks, eats, then comes home." Furious, Ryan sat in the house all night, waiting until 8 p.m. before finally seeing me return, riding on the back seat of Chris's bicycle as he pedaled me home. From that day on, Ryan changed. He no longer used work as an excuse to hang around the base with Lily all day. Instead, he started acting like the other officers in the compound, coming home after work with 2 side dishes from the cafeteria and a bag of buns, even buying 200 coal briquettes for the stove. Every night after work, he'd heat the buns and dishes on the coal stove and wait for me to come home, just like a husband waiting to have dinner with his wife. If it had been the old me, I would have been moved to tears, completely falling into his carefully built trap of tenderness. But now, faced with Ryan's deliberate attempts to show kindness, I simply responded the same way he did to me in my past life, with a cold tone. "Comrade Ryan, let's not forget. We're just a fake couple in name only. My heart belongs to Chris. Please don't harbor any unrealistic fantasies about us." With a loud crash, the thick ceramic bowl full of porridge slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, then lowered his head in silence. He quietly fetched a broom and dustpan, slowly sweeping up the broken pieces and the dust-covered porridge from the ground. Seeing me stubbornly sitting nearby, refusing to touch the food he had packed from the cafeteria, Ryan gave a bitter smile. "Sorry, I overstepped. I just didn't think you actually liked that man so much. I thought maybe since you agreed to this fake marriage, you had some small feelings for me too. Anyway, today was my fault. I apologize. I won't interfere with your relationship again." I looked up at him, my expression calm. That's for the best. After all, this was a fake marriage from the start. We both agreed to that. But if seeing me around makes you uncomfortable, I can move in with Chris. Publicly, I'll just say you're away on duty, and I didn't feel safe staying here alone. "No, don't move out," Ryan suddenly said, standing up abruptly. "Don't go. I'll return to the base tonight and leave this place for you. He lowered his head and stared intently at my face, as if searching for some trace of hesitation or sadness. But what he saw instead was a woman completely at ease, maybe even a little relieved and happy. At that moment, Ryan was struck by a painful realization. The woman who was his wife in name no longer liked him at all. That night, Ryan left me 50 yen along with 2 meat coupons, 1 pound of sugar coupons, and a few cloth ration tickets. Then without a word he returned to base. When the neighbor saw that Ryan didn't even spend his leave nights at home, their looks toward me were filled with mockery and pity. The woman next door, Mrs. Liu, kindly warned me. Emily, your husband's handsome, has a promising future, and comes from a good family. You better hold on tight. There are so many women out there waiting to snatch a man like him. You should hurry up and give him a son while you're still young. Otherwise some vixen will take him away, and you'll be left with nothing but tears. I smiled politely, and explained that Ryan really was staying late at the unit to work overtime. He wasn't sneaking off to see another woman. But Mrs. Liu clearly didn't believe me. The way she looked at me, it was like I was some poor fool. From that day forward, Ryan really did keep his word. He never came home again. But every month he sent someone to deliver half his salary and all his ration coupons to me. I didn't refuse. I accepted everything. He owed me that from our last life. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the moment in my past life when Ryan's father had been hospitalized with liver cancer. When we received the telegram, Ryan immediately drove over to pick me up. But unlike before, this time he didn't feel entitled to ask me to quit my job and return home to take care of his parents. We stayed at his family home for 3 days. Right before we left, Ryan pulled out a bank book and handed it to his mother, suggesting she hire a caregiver for his father. His mother gave me a look, subtle but clearly dissatisfied, and tentatively asked, "Your father's this sick, and neither of you can stay behind?" The implication in her words was obvious. Ryan was now a deputy company commander. This was a crucial time for him to earn merits and rise through the ranks. So of course he couldn't take a long leave to care for his father. What she really meant was that I should offer to resign, or take unpaid leave to stay behind and do it. I glanced at Ryan. He looked away, avoiding my eyes. In my past life, I had been crushed under the weight of tears, guilt, and the neighbor's judgment. In the end, I was emotionally blackmailed into giving up everything and spent 12 long years trapped in Ryan's family home, living like a widow. But in this life, I wouldn't be that naive, obedient girl anymore. After all, I was never really part of the Ryan family. If his parents wanted their daughter-in-law to stay and care for them, they should be looking for Lily instead. Ryan's mother was an educated woman. Despite being educated, she didn't stoop to acting like a stereotypical evil mother-in-law. But her eyes kept signaling to me, dropping subtle hints again and again. I pretended not to see them and answered firmly. I've already decided to put the collective above my personal needs and dedicate myself to the cause of socialism. I can't abandon my work to come home and care for the elderly. But as your daughter-in-law, I added, it's still my duty to show proper filial piety. So from now on, I won't take a cent of Ryan's salary or any of the ration coupons the unit gives him. Have him send all of it back here to pay for a nurse, medicine, and your father's treatments. And I meant it. Starting the very next month, I stopped accepting any money or coupons Ryan sent through others. But Lily, the pampered daughter of a capitalist who had grown used to a life of luxury, wasn't so lucky. Without that extra half of Ryan's income to support her, her days ahead wouldn't be nearly as comfortable as before. In this life, I didn't waste my time working like a mule for the Ryan family, or waiting on his parents. I had more time to go treasure hunting with Chris. We took money and ration coupons and traveled to remote communes, visiting scrapyards. With very little money, we managed to find rare out-of-print books, damaged antiques, old paintings and calligraphy, even cultural relics people had been using as flower pots. We used our earnings to secretly bail out several master craftsmen and restorers who were still locked away in reform camps. With their help, we made incredibly convincing replicas. The fakes were sold at high prices to foreigners, while we kept the genuine items in the country. In the chaos of those years, we did everything we could to quietly and carefully protect our national heritage. We did our best to reduce the regret that decades later, China might look back on her stolen treasures and find they'd never come home. When things got busy, I simply moved in with Chris. After several days without returning to the compound, Ryan suddenly showed up. He walked in just as Chris and I were sitting shoulder to shoulder, carefully examining a fragmented rare book. Ryan's face darkened, and he marched inside, teeth clenched. "Emily Shun," he snapped. "So, this is your so-called pure friendship. You told me you never crossed the line with him. I just came from the compound. They said you haven't been home in days. Are you and he?" I cut him off, already tired of his suspicion. "Comrade Ryan, whatever kind of relationship I have with Chris has nothing to do with you. Don't forget, we're only husband and wife in name." Ryan growled through clenched teeth, his voice low and furious. "Fake marriage or not, you're still my wife. You being out all night with a man, sleeping who knows where. What do you expect people to think of me?" I stood up and faced him unwavering. "Now you care what people think. Where was that concern when you abandoned your new bride to go strolling under the moonlight with Lily? Watching movies, shopping at the department store, boating at the park. Did you care what people thought of me back then? Ryan, if you're so worried about whether I'm cheating on you, don't tell me. Are you falling for me?" The moment the words left my mouth, it was like I'd slammed a hammer straight into his face. His expression twisted with discomfort. He wanted to say he loved Lily deeply, that there was no way he'd fall for another woman. But Emily Shun was his lawfully wedded wife. If a husband fell for his own wife, wasn't that natural? Or maybe what he felt wasn't love. Maybe it was something else. Some strange possessive urge had crept in simply because I was legally his. Because no matter what, I was his wife. A military marriage protected by law. Ryan took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "Emily, I didn't handle things well before. I didn't think about your feelings or your reputation. Please come home with me. I promise I'll limit how much time I spend alone with Lily. I'll give you the respect you deserve. Let's go back to living together like before." Looking at the pleading look in his eyes, I was suddenly struck by a ridiculous thought. Could he really be falling for me? Just then Chris spoke up. "Comrade Ryan, I'm afraid that won't work. You know very well that Emily and I love each other. Honestly, I don't want to see her living with another man." As a man, he added, "I think you understand how I feel, don't you?" Ryan's fists clenched at his sides. Ryan stared at Chris with sharp, furious eyes. His voice was cold and hard. "Comrade Chris, no matter what kind of relationship you and Emily had in the past, you need to remember until Emily and I officially file for divorce, she is by law my wife." Chris gave a faint smile. "Then I'll wait. I'll wait for the day you and Emily get divorced." Ryan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The very next day, we received an urgent telegram from home. Ryan's father had passed away after failing to respond to emergency treatment in the hospital. Ryan drove over immediately to pick me up for the funeral. The entire ride I was in a daze. I hadn't expected that without my careful care in this lifetime, his father's late-stage liver cancer wouldn't even last half a year. At the funeral, watching Ryan's mother sob uncontrollably and eventually faint, I sighed and quietly pulled Ryan aside. "Your mother doesn't look well. If you get a chance, you should take her to the hospital for a full checkup." Even though Ryan's mother had always carried a certain calculating edge toward me, both in this life and the last, I couldn't forget that in my past life before she passed away, she left me 5,000 yuan and a house in the provincial capital. Just for that, I genuinely hoped her illness could be discovered early. Maybe there was still time for a cure. But what I didn't expect was that during the burial, in front of both sides of the family, Ryan's mother suddenly raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The blow stunned me completely. Standing in front of the tombstone, her eyes red with rage, she glared at me like I had personally caused her husband's death. "Emily Shun, you're not worthy of being a daughter-in-law of the Ryan family. While your father-in-law was dying of cancer in the hospital, you, his daughter-in-law, still had the nerve to go back to work like nothing was happening. How did our Ryan family end up with such an ungrateful, heartless woman? If it weren't for you, how could Ryan's father have passed so quickly?" Hearing her irrational accusations and verbal assault, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. You said it yourself. I'm only your daughter-in-law in name. Ryan is his son. If even he didn't stay to care for his father, why should I, a daughter-in-law, be the one to do it? She snapped back, sharp and spiteful. Because you're Ryan's wife. He's serving the nation in the military, doing important things. As his military spouse, it's your job to honor his parents and hold the home front for him. I had no interest in getting into a shouting match with her, so I turned and looked at Ryan instead. At this point, there's nothing left to hide. Do you want to tell her yourself or should I? Ryan's head snapped up, panic flooding his eyes. He immediately understood what I meant and looked terrified. Emily, please don't say it. I'm begging you. His mother stepped in front of him and stared me down. Let him speak. I want to hear what reason he has to not honor his own parents. Ryan, blocked by his mother, could only plead silently with his eyes, desperate and fearful. Don't. Please don't say it. But it was too late. Ryan, I said coldly. Every time you chose to let me take the blame, every time you let me suffer for you, that's when whatever existed between us died. Then I turned to his mother. In front of Ryan's terrified, hopeless gaze, I calmly told her everything. The fake marriage, how I had played the role of his wife while he secretly kept meeting Lily behind everyone's backs, how I had protected their affair. Her mouth fell open, her eyes widening in disbelief. She gasped, unable to breathe, and then collapsed in front of her husband's grave. After the funeral, I ignored Ryan's pleas and bought the earliest train ticket out of the city. As I was leaving, Ryan gave a bitter smile and asked, "You really won't stay? At least wait until after the mourning period is over." I shook my head. I'm sorry. After all, this marriage was never real. Me staying to mourn your father, it isn't my place. In times like this, you should have the person you truly want to marry by your side. But how could Lily show up now? In our past life, she had avoided facing his parents' anger and responsibility. That was why she had asked Ryan to marry me under false pretenses, to keep herself from having to care for his aging parents. It wasn't until Ryan's parents passed away, when those two burdens were finally gone, that Lily revealed her true colors. She pressured Ryan to force me into a divorce so she could take my place. But in this life, with his father dying so early and his mother still seething with anger, Lily didn't dare to show her face. I heard that the day after news of Ryan's father's death spread, Lily applied for a medical assistance mission on the border. Military orders are absolute. She wouldn't be able to return for at least 2 years. And in 2 years, time would have dulled everything. When she came back under the moonlight, she would once again be that pure white moonlight in Ryan's heart. She calculated all this far too well. But in this lifetime, I had already seen through everything. I didn't want to be just another pawn in her and Ryan's love story. Once I had spoken the truth, I submitted a formal divorce application to the organization. But for some reason, Ryan kept stalling. He refused to sign the papers. I moved out of the military housing complex, and Ryan was right. Until we were officially divorced, it would do neither Chris nor me any good to live together. So, I relocated to the dormitory at my workplace. In my free time, I began sorting through the damaged manuscripts I'd gathered from scrapyards. I planned to publish a book, one that would let the world know that these dazzling cultural treasures belong to the Chinese people. Decades from now, if some shameless foreign country dared to register these artifacts for World Heritage status and claim them as their own, this book would serve as hard evidence, a slap in their face. I never expected that while I stayed behind closed doors writing my book, chaos was already erupting back at the military compound. After Ryan's mother found out our marriage was fake, she tracked down Lily's previous station, then used her connections from Ryan's father to drag Lily back from the front lines. Back at the compound, Lily stood trembling behind Ryan, her delicate face covered with fresh red slap marks. Ryan's mother glared at him, her voice ice cold. "If you still consider me your mother, then today, in front of everyone, you're going to cut ties with this woman." Ryan shook his head in agony. "Mom, I know you're grieving after Dad passed, but this has nothing to do with Lily. How can you blame her for this?" His mother shouted. "How does it not? If not for her, you and Emily would have been a real couple by now. I know Emily's character. If she were truly our daughter-in-law, the moment your father was diagnosed with cancer, she would have quit her job and come back to care for him full-time. He might still be alive today. It's that vixen who ruined your marriage and killed your father, and you still want to protect her? Her accusations hit hard, forcing Ryan and Lily to retreat step by step, their faces pale. At that time, improper romantic conduct, especially between unmarried men and women, was taken extremely seriously, and both Ryan and Lily were military officers. If the accusations were confirmed, not only would their careers be over, they might be expelled from the army entirely. Ryan begged his mother to stop. Lily, now terrified, sobbed and promised that she would stay away from Ryan and never interfere in his marriage again. But it was too late. The housing compound was filled with officers and their families from the same military unit. Ryan wasn't even the highest-ranking officer there. The day after the uproar, both Ryan and Lily were suspended from duty and put under investigation. The investigative team came to my unit as well, asking me about my husband's relationship with Lily. I didn't try to throw them under the bus. I just told the truth. Yes, Ryan and I are married in name only. On the night of our wedding, he told me he already had someone in his heart. He swore to stay pure for her and that we would live as a fake couple. As for whether that person is Lily or whether they did anything that would betray the marriage, I said, I honestly don't know. Even though I hadn't slandered them, Ryan and Lily had been far too high profile on base. The investigators only had to ask around a little before they gathered plenty of evidence. They'd been seen going to the park together. They had been seen eating together at a state-run restaurant, watching movies side by side. Even after Ryan and I were married, he ignored me, his legal wife, while handing over his full salary and ration coupons to Lily. The evidence was overwhelming. Soon, both Ryan and Lily were expelled from the military. The apartment we had in the housing compound was reclaimed by the army. My request for divorce, which had been pending for so long, was finally approved. On the day of the divorce, Ryan looked unshaven and disheveled in a wrinkled army green shirt. His expression was full of regret as he stared at me. Emily, he asked quietly, do you think there's still a chance for us to start over someday? I smiled. Ryan, there was never a beginning between us, so how could there be a future? The next time I saw Ryan was 5 years later. My new book had become a nationwide success, and I was invited by the Cultural Federation in my hometown to attend a forum. When I walked into the venue, I was surprised to spot a familiar figure near the entrance. It was Ryan, working as a security guard. He saw me too, but quickly turned away, pretending not to notice. I didn't approach him either. Sometimes pretending not to know someone is the only dignified choice left between adults. Still, at the dinner after the forum, someone brought him up. I learned that after Ryan was expelled from the army, his mother had pulled some strings to get him assigned to a rural post for rehabilitation. But just then Lily, his precious white moonlight, couldn't handle the hardships of life at the grassroots level. She ran off with a nouveau riche businessman. Ryan was devastated. He refused to stay in the countryside. Against his mother's wishes, he sold off most of the family's remaining property and scraped together enough money to go into business. His plan was to strike it rich and make Lily regret ever leaving him. Unfortunately, Ryan had no talent for business. In less than a year, he lost everything. Around that time, just like in my past life, his mother was diagnosed with a tumor. Ryan sold off the very last of the family's assets to try and save her, but it wasn't enough. She passed away. After her death, the only home they had left was repossessed by her former work unit. Ryan had nowhere to go and eventually had to beg an old comrade to get him a job as a security guard. At least it came with food and lodging. As for Lily, she followed that nouveau riche businessman to the south. She thought she was finally going to live the good life, only to discover that the man already had a wife. His wife was infertile, so he tricked Lily into coming along in hopes she'd bear him a son. Lily, proud and arrogant as ever, refused to accept being used that way. Relying on her pharmaceutical background, she secretly concocted poison and killed the wife. Just when she thought she'd successfully secured her place, the wife's brothers came for revenge. With no evidence and no questions asked, they tied Lily up, stuffed her into a sack, weighted with stones, and threw her into the sea. That era saw countless bodies washing ashore, due to failed escape attempts from the coast. No one even investigated anymore. Lily's disappearance didn't raise alarms, and no one reported her missing. It wasn't until a year later that one of the wife's brothers was arrested for another crime. During interrogation, he confessed to Lily's murder. But by then, too much time had passed. Her body was never recovered. None of that had anything to do with me anymore. Chris, as always, had continued to help me collect rare cultural texts and artifacts. Now it was time to prepare for my second book. Thankfully, in recent years, Chris had revived his family's traditional pawnshop business. With him managing the home and raising our child, I could finally focus on writing again in peace.